"Come back here, pretty one," the arrogant millionaire said to the employee as laughter filled the luxury ballroom. She lowered her gaze. Her hands were trembling. The worn uniform seemed to weigh a ton. That night, facing the broken mirror in her apartment, with tears falling like silent rain, she made a decision. She sewed her own dress from discarded scraps. She applied makeup with the precision of someone rebuilding her soul. And when she returned to the ballroom, she didn't return for him. She returned to remind herself of who she really was. Like this, if it touched your soul, it's more than a click. It's a silent embrace among those who know what it is to rise again. Comment what you think this story will end up being. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it costs you nothing, but it means a lot to us. Thank you for being here. The ballroom of the Grand Imperial Sun Hotel gleamed like a jewel in the heart of New York City. Crystal chandeliers spilled golden light onto polished marble, while white-jacketed servers glided between guests whose jewelry was worth more than entire years of honest work. Eleanor Vance had been on her feet for 8 hours. Her second-hand black shoes pinched her swollen ankles. The starched uniform scratched her tired skin. She was 42, but the employee locker room mirror reflected a face that looked older, exhausted, marked by sleepless nights and unpaid bills. She held a tray of champagne flutes while observing the guests. Socialites, business tycoons, influencers in gowns that cost what she earned in a year, all gathered for the launch of an exclusive jewelry collection, all shining with that particular glow of those who have never known the humiliation of counting coins to buy bread. In the center of the ballroom, next to a podium lit by strategic spotlights, stood him, Alexander Sterling, 35 years old, owner of an international chain of luxury hotels, Italian suit that fit his body as if he were born wearing it, Swiss watch that flashed streaks of light every time he gestured with those hands that had never washed a dish or sewn a button. He was smiling, always smiling. That smile Eleanor knew, the smile of someone who wins even when they're wrong, the smile of someone who has never had to seriously apologize. Next to him, Tiffany Brooks, fashion influencer, 2 million followers, emerald green dress that showed more skin than fabric. She laughed with that practiced, perfect laugh for the cameras that constantly followed her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander announced, raising his glass, "tonight we are not just celebrating jewelry. We are celebrating art, luxury, excellence." Polite applause filled the room. Eleanor walked between the tables, offering champagne, invisible as always. Guests took flutes from her tray without looking at her, without a thank you, as if she were part of the furniture. She was used to it. She had been working at the hotel for 2 years. Ever since. Everything fell apart. Ever since Dr. Richard Stone stole her research and destroyed her with lies so perfectly constructed that no one questioned his version. Dr. Eleanor Vance. That was her name before. Molecular chemist. Researcher at the National Institute of Sciences in Boston. She had dedicated 5 years to developing a compound that could revolutionize cancer treatment. 5 years of nights in the lab, of meticulous data, of growing hope. Until Stone, her superior, presented the research as his own. And when she protested, he accused her of falsifying results, of plagiarism, of incompetence. He had connections. She didn't. He had power. She didn't. She was fired, humiliated publicly. No institute would hire her afterward. Her name was ruined, her career destroyed, and there was a mouth to feed. Clara, her daughter, 12 years old, intelligent eyes that deserved to see their mother succeed, not barely survive. "More champagne," a dry voice ordered. Eleanor blinked, returning to Siey, the present. A woman with a diamond necklace extended an empty glass without looking at her. "Right away, madam." The main presentation of the evening was about to begin. The lights dimmed. A central spotlight illuminated the podium where Alexander Sterling waited, with that confidence of someone who knows all eyes are on him and enjoys it. "What you will see now," he said, his voice amplified by hidden microphones, "is more than a gown. It is a masterpiece. Italian silk, hand-woven. Swarovski. Crystals inlaid one by one. Designed exclusively by the Valentina Rossi fashion house." He made a dramatic pause. "Value, $2 million. Murmurs of admiration ran through the ballroom. 2 assistants entered carrying a mannequin covered with a black velvet cloth. With a synchronized movement, they removed the cover. The dress was red, a deep, ruby blood red that seemed to absorb and reflect light at the same time. The cut was impeccable, the fall of the fabric a cascade of elegance. The crystals formed geometric patterns that sparkled with every angle of the light. The ballroom erupted in applause. Eleanor watched from her corner near the wall, holding her empty tray. It was beautiful, she had to admit, but it was also obscene. $2 million for a dress while there are children who don't eat. $2 million for vanity, while there are mothers who work until they break to pay the rent. Her left leg was trembling from exhaustion. She had been standing for too long. She needed to lean just for a moment. She leaned slightly against a decorative column. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but the column was not fixed to the floor. It was part of the event's temporary decoration. It wobbled. Eleanor tried to steady it, but the weight overcame her. The column fell with a metallic clang that echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. The silence was instantaneous and absolute. All eyes turned to her. Eleanor felt the floor open up beneath her. Her face burned with shame. Her hands trembled as she tried to lift the column. "I'm so sorry, I apologize," she murmured, but her voice was barely heard. Laughter, first contained, then more open. The guests looked at each other, smiling with that casual cruelty of those who find entertainment in another's stumble. Alexander Sterling watched the scene with an amused expression. He exchanged a look with Tiffany Brooks, who already had her phone up, recording. Eleanor managed to write the column. Her hands were shaking so much she almost let it fall again. She wanted to disappear, evaporate, cease to exist in that moment. "Easy, easy," Alexander said, his voice loaded with condescension. "We all make mistakes." More laughter. Eleanor kept her head down, ready to retreat as quickly as possible, but then Alexander spoke again. "Although," he raised his glass, looking directly at her, "if this employee comes back to this ball pretty—" He paused, letting the expectation grow. "I will personally allow her to wear this $2 million gown." The ballroom burst into roaring laughter. "And I will publicly admit," Alexander continued, with that smile Eleanor would learn to hate, "that I judged wrongly." Tiffany Brooks laughed so hard she had to wipe away her mascara tears. Her phone kept recording, capturing every second of the humiliation. Eleanor felt something snap inside her. It wasn't the first time she had been humiliated, but there was something about this public humiliation. These laughs, these cameras, that was different. It was the last straw, the stone that shattered the already cracked glass. She raised her gaze, just for a second, long enough for her eyes to meet Alexander Sterling's. He was still smiling. She walked out of the ballroom with the dignity she had left, as the laughter pursued her like shadows. She didn't know that video would be online in less than 10 minutes. She didn't know her life was about to turn into a nightmare. And she didn't know that. Somewhere deep in her exhausted being, a spark of fury had just ignited. The video reached 100,000 views in the first hour. By midnight, it was 3 million. By dawn, #1 trending topic in the USA. Pretty employee became the hashtag of the day. The comments were merciless. Anyone else dying of laughter? Poor woman, but what an awkward moment. Alexander Sterling is a genius, lol. She should be grateful she wasn't fired. But there were others. This is cruelty disguised. As humor, why are we celebrating public humiliation? She's a worker. He's an abusive millionaire. Eleanor didn't see any of this immediately. She arrived at her apartment at 2 in the morning, so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. The building smelled of dampness and stale food. The stairs creaked under her feet. She opened the door to her 2-room apartment. Clara was sleeping on the sofa, with her half-done math homework on the coffee table. Eleanor watched her for a moment. Her reason to get up every morning, to smile even when she wanted to cry, to keep going even when everything felt impossible. She took off her shoes, letting out a sigh of relief as her feet touched the cold floor. The blisters were burning. Tomorrow she would have to cover them with bandages and wear the same shoes again. She washed her face with cold water. The mirror returned a tired gaze. Deep, dark circles. Wrinkles that weren't there 2 years ago. Dull hair that once shone. She didn't recognize herself. She lay down on her narrow bed, in the room she shared with boxes of old clothes and unpaid bills. She closed her eyes. She dreamed of laboratories, of microscopes, of the smell of agar and the glow of chemical solutions under ultraviolet light. She dreamed of who she was before. The phone woke her up. It was 6 in the morning. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Vance? This is Stephen Clark, hotel personnel supervisor. Eleanor's stomach clenched. Good morning, Mr. Clark. I need you to come to my office before your shift, at 8 sharp. Has something happened? 8 o'clock, Mrs. Vance. He hung up. Eleanor sat up in bed, her heart racing. She knew what it meant. Lo había visto antes. The early call, the dry tone, the order to report before the shift. She was going to be fired. Stephen Clark's office was in the hotel basement, between the supply warehouse and the laundry room. It was small, windowless, lit by a fluorescent light that flickered occasionally. Clark was a 50-year-old man with a grey mustache and a perpetually irritated expression. He was sitting behind his metallic desk when Eleanor entered. Sit down, he ordered, without looking up from his computer. Eleanor sat in the plastic chair opposite the desk, hands in her lap, back straight, preparing for the worst. Clark turned the screen toward her. It was the video, her tripping over the column, the laughter, Alexander's comment, everything captured in high definition. 7 million views, Clark said. The hotel has received hundreds of calls, journalists, curious people, critics saying we are an establishment that humiliates its employees. Mr. Clark, Don't interrupt me. Eleanor closed her mouth. The management has decided you need a change of assignment, for the good of the hotel and yourself. For the good of yourself. That phrase that always meant the opposite. Starting today, you will be transferred to the laundry room. Night shift. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Eleanor felt the air sucked from her lungs. But Mr. Clark, I have a daughter. I can't work nights, she's alone. You should have thought about that before starring in a viral scandal. I didn't do anything. It was an accident. The result is the same. Clark closed the laptop with a sharp click. Your new salary will be $800 a month. You can start tonight. $800. $200 less than before. With the rent at $1,100, utilities, food, Clara's school supplies. I can't survive on that. Then find another job, Clark shrugged. But I warn you, with this video circulating, it won't be easy for someone to hire you. It was a perfect trap. Stay and be exploited, or leave and find nothing. Eleanor left the office feeling like she was walking underwater. Everything was slow, heavy, unreal. She went up to the ground floor. She passed the ballroom where she had been humiliated. It was now empty, being cleaned by other employees who avoided her gaze. She reached the staff locker room. She sat on the wooden bench. She took out her phone. Clara had left her messages. Mom, why is there a video of you online? Mom, they're saying things to me at school. Mom, are you okay? Eleanor pressed the phone against her chest. She took a deep breath. Once. Twice. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not where they could see her. But when she got home that afternoon, after fruitlessly looking for other jobs, after seeing how every interviewer recognized her face from the video, after feeling the weight of impossibility crushing her, then she did cry. She cried while Clara hugged her, saying, "It's okay, Mom, it's okay." Even though her daughter had also cried, had also been pointed at, had also been humiliated at school for being the clumsy employee's daughter, and it was in that moment, with the tears still wetting her face, that Eleanor took a decision that would change everything. Eleanor stayed awake all night. Not because of the new night shift which would start the next day. She stayed awake because something had changed inside her, something fundamental. For 2 years, she had accepted. She had bowed her head. She had swallowed humiliations because she needed to survive, because Clara needed to eat, because there was no other option. But this humiliation was different. It was public. It was viral. It was millions of people laughing at her pain, her exhaustion, her existence reduced to internet entertainment. And that man, Alexander Sterling, had turned her suffering into a joke. If she comes back pretty, as if beauty was her only possible redemption, as if her worth as a person depended on meeting aesthetic standards set by people who had never worked an honest day in their lives. She turned on her old computer, the one that had survived from before. She looked up information about the event. She discovered there would be a second charity ball in 3 weeks at the same hotel organized by the same people. She read the video comments, thousands, some cruel, others outraged, many debating whether she deserved to be humiliated or not. as if her humanity were a subject for discussion. She found entire threads about Alexander Sterling, his hotel empire, his exclusive parties, his influencer girlfriend, his reputation as a ruthless businessman who tolerates no weakness. And then, sometime near dawn, Eleanor had an idea. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was exactly what she needed. She would go back to the ball, pretty, as he had said, not to seek his approval, not to validate his mockery, but to demonstrate something much more important, that she decided who she was, not him. The problem was simple. Eleanor had no money for a dress, or for makeup, or for shoes, or for anything, but she had something more valuable. She had intelligence, she had determination, and she had access to resources that no one else noticed. During her night shifts in the laundry room, she started collecting discarded fabric from damaged tablecloths, decorative ribbons from past events that were going into the trash, buttons from old uniforms, scraps of curtains that were being replaced. Every night, after her shift, when Clara was asleep, Eleanor sewed. She had learned from her grandmother. Precise stitches, skilled hands. What was once a hobby now became a tool for survival. The dress slowly took shape. It wouldn't be $2 million, but it would be hers. Made with her hands, with her time, with her refusal to give up. She used her chemistry knowledge to create a homemade dye that converted the disparate fabrics into a deep, uniform blue. She calculated the proportions as she calculated formulas in the lab, with precision, with method, with the certainty that science did not lie. Clara watched her some nights, fascinated. "Mom, are you going to the party?" "Yes, my love." "Why?" Eleanor stopped sewing for a moment. She looked at her daughter, those eyes that deserved to see their mother strong, not broken. "Because someone said I couldn't, and I need to teach you that when someone tells you that you can't, you decide if they're right or not." Clara nodded, though she didn't fully understand. "What if they laugh again?" "Then let them laugh, but this time I'll be there because I chose to be, not because they pay me to serve drinks. That's the difference." The dress was finished 5 days before the event. Eleanor tried it on in front of the cracked mirror in her bedroom. It wasn't perfect. The seams were noticeable if you looked closely. The fabric didn't have the sheen of Italian silk. The adornments were modest, but it was beautiful in its own way. Beautiful because it represented resilience. Beautiful because it was proof that she was still capable of creating, of imagining, of existing beyond the employee uniform. Now came the hardest part, getting an invitation to the event. Charity events at the Grand Imperial. Sun Hotel was strictly private. Guest list, security at the door, rigorous dress code. Eleanor knew she couldn't just show up at the door. She needed a strategy. She spent days researching. She discovered the event was organized by the Hope Foundation, a charitable organization that supported medical research. Ironic, considering her past. She found the coordinator's name, Patricia Miller. She wrote her an email, simple, direct, honest. "Dear Ms. Miller, my name is Eleanor Vance. You may recognize my name from the recent viral video. I would like to attend your upcoming event to demonstrate that people are not their worst moment captured on video. I understand this may seem an unusual request, but I believe my presence would send an important message about dignity and second chances. I am not asking for charity. I will pay for my ticket if you allow me to attend. Sincerely, Eleanor Vance." She didn't expect a reply. It arrived 2 days later. "Mrs. Vance, your request has sparked debate on our committee. Some support you. Others believe it could create conflict with our main sponsors, including Mr. Sterling. However, we have decided to accept you, not because we want controversy, but because we believe in the values our foundation represents. Your ticket is confirmed, no cost. Consider it an investment in human dignity. Patricia Miller." Eleanor read the email 3 times. She couldn't believe it had worked. Clara shrieked with joy when she told her, "You're going, Mom." "You're really going." "I'm really going." But one problem remained. Eleanor didn't know how to do her makeup. She had never been vain. In the lab, she wore a clean face, hair pulled back, no unnecessary adornments. She posted in a Facebook group for women in New York City. She explained her situation without revealing her identity. The responses were overwhelming. Dozens of women offering help. professional makeup artists willing to donate their time, stylists who wanted to contribute to her silent revolution, as one called it. She chose a woman named Sophia, 30 years old, owner of a small beauty salon, single mother who understood the struggle. "I won't charge you anything," Sophia told her when they met, "because what you're doing is bigger than a dress or makeup. You're reminding the world that employees, single mothers, women who have been knocked down, we are also human." On the day of the event, Sophia came to Eleanor's apartment. She transformed her face with the precision of an artist. She enhanced her tired eyes until they shone, covered the marks of exhaustion. She painted her lips a red that said, "I'm here," without shouting. She styled her hair in soft waves that framed her face. When she finished, Eleanor looked in the mirror. She didn't recognize herself, but in a good way, in a way that reminded her of who she had been before the world broke her. "You're beautiful," Clara whispered, her eyes full of tears. "I'm myself," Eleanor replied. Finally, the Grand Imperial Sun Hotel shone with the same ostentation as always. Red carpet, photographers, guests arriving in cars that cost more than houses. Eleanor arrived by subway. She walked the last 4 blocks in her new shoes, bought at a thrift store but clean and dignified, feeling every step like a declaration. The security line at the entrance was long. Elegant couples, groups of businessmen, influencers posing for selfies. When her turn came, the security guard checked the list. Name: Eleanor Vance. The guard stopped. He looked at her, recognition in his eyes. "One moment." He spoke into his radio. Eleanor felt all eyes on her. The murmurs began. "Isn't that—" "It can't be. It's her, the one from the video." The guard returned with Patricia Miller, a woman in her 60s, short grey hair, elegant pantsuit. "Mrs. Vance," Patricia said, extending her hand. "Welcome." Eleanor shook her hand, firm, confident. "Thank you for this opportunity. The opportunity is yours. Use it well." Patricia handed her a VIP pass and walked away. Eleanor entered the hotel. She crossed the lobby where she had worked countless shifts. She climbed the stairs she had cleaned. She arrived at the very ballroom where she had been humiliated. Only this time she wasn't wearing a uniform. She was wearing her handmade blue dress. She was wearing her restored dignity. She was wearing her decision not to be defined by the worst moment of her life. Soft music filled the space. Guests talked, laughed, drank champagne. The atmosphere was identical to 3 weeks ago, except that this time, when Eleanor entered, the ballroom fell silent. It wasn't gradual. It was instant, as if someone had pressed a pause button. All conversations stopped. All heads turned. And there, by the bar, glass in hand, and that smile beginning to fade, was Alexander Sterling. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Eleanor took a step forward, then another. She walked toward him with her head held high, her shoulders straight, her heart beating so loud she felt everyone could hear it. Alexander didn't move. He seemed frozen, processing the impossibility of what he was seeing. Tiffany Brooks, next to him, had her mouth open. Her phone was already out, recording. Eleanor stopped in front of Alexander. The entire ballroom watched, hundreds of eyes, dozens of cameras. She took a deep breath and spoke. "I came back pretty, as you asked." Her voice was calm but clear, audible in the absolute silence. "Now keep your promise." No one was breathing. Alexander Sterling, the man who always had an answer, who always controlled the situation, who never lost the game, said nothing. He just stared at her, with an expression Eleanor couldn't fully decipher. Surprise, discomfort, respect. Finally, he spoke. "You," he cleared his throat, "you look different. I look the way I always should have looked, like someone who doesn't deserve to be humiliated for being tired from work." A murmur ran through the room. Eleanor felt the gazes beginning to change. She was no longer just the clumsy employee from the viral video. She was something more, someone else. Alexander took a sip of his drink. He seemed to be stalling for time. "What I said that night was, it was a joke. I didn't intend..." "Didn't intend what? To humiliate me? To turn me into entertainment? To use my exhaustion and my poverty as material for laughs?" The silence was now dense, awkward. "You made a public promise," Eleanor continued. "The $2 million gown. You said if I came back pretty, you would let me wear it, and that you would admit you judged wrongly." Alexander clenched his jaw. Eleanor could see the calculation in his eyes, the weight of the cameras, the pressure of public scrutiny, the consequences of breaking a promise made with such confidence. "Fine," he finally said, "if that's what you want." "It's not what I want," Eleanor interrupted him. "It's what you promised. There's a difference." The $2 million gown was brought into the ballroom on its display mannequin. Alexander Sterling, with tense movements, ordered his assistants to prepare it, but Eleanor raised a hand. "Before we continue, there is something everyone needs to know." The ballroom waited. Tiffany Brooks had her camera focused. The journalists present activated their recorders. Eleanor pulled an envelope from her small purse. She opened it with hands that no longer trembled. "My name is Eleanor Vance. Many know me as the employee from the video, but that's not my full name. My full name is Dr. Eleanor Vance, molecular chemist, research scientist specializing in oncology treatments." A gasp of surprise ran through the room. 3 years ago, I developed a promising compound that could significantly improve cancer treatments. I dedicated 5 years of my life to that research, 5 years at the National Institute of Sciences in Boston. Alexander frowned, trying to understand where this was going. "My research was stolen by my superior, Dr. Richard Stone. He presented my work as his own, and when I protested, he destroyed me. He fabricated evidence that I had plagiarized. He used his connections to ruin my reputation. I was fired. I was erased from the scientific community." The expressions in the ballroom were changing, from curiosity to horror, from entertainment to empathy. "I went from leading research that could save lives to washing hotel sheets because no institute would hire me, because my name was stained by lies." Eleanor held up the papers. "These are documents, emails recovered by a friend still working at the institute, correspondence between Dr. Stone and other researchers where he discusses how to manage my problem. Lab records with my handwriting, my notes, my discoveries, dated 2 years before he presented his research." A journalist stepped forward. "May I see those documents?" "You can all see them. In fact, tonight I am going to publish them online, because the truth deserves light as much as the lies received it." Alexander looked uncomfortable now. This had ceased to be about a dress. It was about justice. It was about abuse of power. And he, on his throne of privilege, was beginning to understand something important. Eleanor turned to him. "You humiliated me because I am an employee, because I serve drinks, because my shoes are old and my uniform is worn. But you never asked why. You never considered that, perhaps, there was a story, an injustice, a whole life behind the woman you turned into a joke." Alexander opened his mouth. He closed it. "No tenía respuesta." "And that's the lesson," Eleanor said, her voice now softer but no less powerful. "That every person who serves your food, cleans your room, holds the door as you pass, each one has a story, each one has dignity, each one deserves respect." The ballroom erupted in applause. No todos. Tiffany Brooks wasn't applauding. Some of Alexander's friends looked uncomfortable, but most of the room was applauding, standing up, with tears in some eyes. Patricia Miller approached Eleanor and hugged her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for reminding us why we do this." But Eleanor wasn't finished. "There's more," Eleanor said, and the room fell silent again. She turned to where Dr. Richard Stone was standing. See, he was there, among the guests. Sponsor of the foundation, respected scientist, thief of dreams. Their eyes met. Stone turned pale. "Dr. Stone," Eleanor said, "how convenient to find you here, at a charity event for medical research. Research like the kind you stole." Stone tried to speak, but his voice came out weak. "Eleanor, this is not the place." "It's not. What is the place then? The institute where you destroyed me, the press you lied to, the courts I couldn't afford?" Eleanor walked toward him. The crowd parted, creating a path. "You didn't just steal my research. You stole 3 years of my life. You stole my daughter's future. You stole treatments that could have helped real patients." She pulled more papers from her purse. "But here is the interesting part. While researching my case, I discovered I wasn't the only one. There are 4 more women, 4 researchers whose careers you destroyed in the same way." Stone stood up. "This is slander. I will call my lawyer. Please do. I would love for this to reach court, because now I have evidence. I have documents. I have witnesses. I have everything I Didn't have 3 years ago when it was just my word against yours. Patricia Miller stepped closer. Dr. Stone, I think you should leave. This is ridiculous. This woman is telling the truth. A voice interrupted from the back of the room. Everyone turned. It was a woman in her 50s, elegant, confident. I am Dr. Carol Jenkins, director of the chemistry department at Columbia University, and I can confirm that Dr. Vance's accusations are true. She approached the center of the ballroom. 2 months ago, Eleanor contacted me. She showed me her evidence. I conducted my own investigation. I spoke with Dr. Stone's former colleagues. I reviewed documents, and I uncovered a pattern of abuse, plagiarism, and career destruction spanning over 10 years. The ballroom erupted in murmurs. Tonight, Dr. Jenkins continued, our university's ethics committee will be filing formal charges against Dr. Stone. We will recommend his expulsion from all American scientific societies, and we fully support the reincorporation of Dr. Vance into the field of research. Stone staggered. His face had gone from red with anger to white with panic. They can't. My reputation, your reputation, Eleanor said calmly, was built on the ruins of ours. It's time for it to fall. Stone practically ran out of the ballroom. The cameras followed him. Flashes exploded. Eleanor stood in the center of the ballroom, breathing deeply. She had done it. She had finally done it. Timan, compensate for what I did to you, but I want you to know I am trying to be better. Eleanor opened the envelope. It was a check, an amount that would cover her debts, Clara's education, and more. I can't accept this, she said, handing the envelope back. Alexander looked genuinely surprised, almost disconcerted. Why not? It could solve many of your problems. Because my dignity is not for sale. It never was. That's the lesson you need to learn. Eleanor placed the envelope on the table with a firm but calm gesture. You see, Mr. Sterling, the problem isn't that you have money. The problem is that you think money can buy everything, including absolution, including forgiveness, including the transformation of a terrible person into a decent one just by signing a check. Alexander leaned back in his chair, processing the words. Then, what can I do? Eleanor stood up, preparing to leave. If you truly want to change, Mr. Sterling, don't do it with money. Do it with actions. Change how you treat your employees. Change the policies in your hotels. Change the culture that allows men like you to believe they can humiliate women like me without consequences. I will, he said, also standing up quickly. I've already started. I audited all my hotels. I raised wages 30% above the legal minimum. I implemented policies for respect and workplace dignity. I fired 3 managers who abused their power, including Stephen Clark. Eleanor stopped when she heard that last name. Clark? I found out how he treated you after the incident, how he demoted you, cut your salary, punished you for something that wasn't your fault. I fired him personally. I told him exactly why. For the first time, Eleanor saw something in Alexander's eyes that she hadn't seen before. Not pity, not performative guilt, but genuine comprehension of the damage caused. I also hired an external consultant specializing in organizational culture, Alexander continued. She's reviewing every one of my hotels, interviewing employees, identifying abusive practices, changing protocols. Eleanor studied him carefully, looking for signs of falsehood, of calculated performance for social media, of superficial change designed to clean up his image. Why? She finally asked. ¿Por qué hacer todo esto? You could simply wait for the scandal to pass, like all powerful men do. Alexander looked at his coffee, which remained untouched, now cold. Because, his voice broke slightly, because that night when you entered the ballroom in that dress you had sewn with your own hands, when you looked me in the eye and demanded I keep my promise, I saw something I had never seen before. What? I saw a real person, not an employee, not a role. A person with a history, with pain, with dignity that I had tried to destroy. And I realized I had spent my entire life without truly seeing people. I only saw functions, roles, tools for my convenience. Hubo silencio. The coffee shop buzzed, with activity around them, but there was a bubble of stillness between them. My mother, Alexander said suddenly, was a waitress. Before she married my father. He was rich, she was poor. After they married, she changed. She became the perfect corporate wife. She forgot where she came from, and she taught me to forget it too. She taught me that we had moved past that class, that now we were better. Eleanor sat down again, unplanned. But when I saw you that day, I remembered old photos of my mother, in a uniform, tired, serving people who treated her like she was invisible, and I realized I had become exactly the kind of man who used to humiliate my mother. A tear rolled down Alexander's cheek. He quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. "So you're not doing this for me," Eleanor said softly. "You're doing it for her." "I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, because I've lived 35 years being the wrong person, and I don't want to die being that man." Eleanor nodded, slowly. "Then keep doing it. Not for me. Not for your mother, for yourself, for the man you could be if you choose to be him every day." She stood up again, this time determined to leave. "But know this, Mr. Sterling, real change doesn't happen in a conversation in a coffee shop. It happens in 1,000 small decisions when no one is looking, when it's difficult, when it's inconvenient, when it costs money and power and privilege. That's where your transformation is tested to see if it's real, or just a well-intentioned performance." Alexander nodded, absorbing every word as if they were vital instructions. Can I write to you? Tell you about the progress? I don't expect a reply, it would help me to know someone is watching. That someone who cares is seeing if I truly change or if I revert to who I was." Eleanor considered the question. Part of her wanted to cut off all contact. But another part, the part that was dedicated to science, that believed in method, in observation, in the documentation of change. "You can write to me," she finally said, "but don't expect praise. Expect honesty. If I see you are relapsing into old patterns, I will tell you. I don't want praise. I want honesty. It's the only thing no one has given me in years." Eleanor left the coffee shop, leaving the check on the table. Alexander stared at it for a long time. Then he tore it into small pieces and threw it in the trash. He didn't need to buy his absolution. He needed to earn his transformation. The first few months at Columbia University were surreal for Eleanor. Her laboratory was spacious, bathed in natural light, streaming through windows overlooking the tree-lined campus. The walls were white, clean, with whiteboards filled with chemical equations and molecular diagrams. The equipment was state-of-the-art: confocal microscopes, mass spectrometers, precise incubators, silent centrifuges. Nothing like the claustrophobic, poorly equipped spaces where she had worked before the downfall. She had a team of 3 research assistants. Lauren, 27, brilliant in biochemistry, with a contagious energy. Michael, 32, meticulous to the point of obsession, perfect for data analysis work. And Sophie, 25, recently graduated but with a scientific intuition that reminded Eleanor of her younger self. The first day when they entered the lab, Lauren said, "Dr. Vance, it's an honor to work with you. I followed your case. What you did was brave." Eleanor smiled wearily. It wasn't bravery. It was desperation. Bravery would have been reporting Stone when it happened, not waiting 3 years until I had nothing left to lose. "With respect, Doctor," Michael interjected, "sometimes bravery is surviving long enough to be able to fight later. Not everyone has the privilege of fighting immediately." Those words resonated with Eleanor. He was right. She had done what she could with what she had, and that was enough. They resumed the research where she had left off. The data Stone had stolen was officially returned to her after a 4-month legal battle. 3 major scientific publications had issued corrections, acknowledging her as the true principal investigator. But the damage to the research itself was significant. Stone, in his incompetence, had misinterpreted several key data points. He had taken the project in erroneous directions. He had wasted resources and time pursuing hypotheses Eleanor had already discarded. In her original notes, "We need to start almost from scratch," Eleanor said one afternoon, looking at the mountains of corrupt data. 3 years of work essentially lost. "Not lost," Sophie said. "We know what doesn't work. That's just as valuable as knowing what does work." Eleanor smiled. The young woman was right. They worked long hours, but they were different from the hours at the hotel. Here, Eleanor chose to be. Here, her mind was engaged. Here, she was herself. Clara had noticed the change in her mother. "Mom, you smile more," she said one night during dinner. "Do I?" "Yes. Even when you're tired. Before, even when you tried to smile, your eyes were sad. Now, your eyes smile too. Eleanor hugged her daughter, feeling deep gratitude for this second opportunity. This recovered life. But the path was not completely smooth. The Stone scandal had created divisions in the scientific community. Some defended him, arguing it was a witch hunt, that science should be separated from politics, that ruining a talented scientist's career over ego issues was excessive. These comments appeared in academic forums, in the comment sections of articles, in whispered conversations at conferences. Eleanor received anonymous emails, some supportive, others accusing her of being an opportunist who used her story to advance her career, of being a radical feminist who wanted to destroy successful men. One night, after reading a particularly venomous thread in a chemistry forum, Eleanor felt tempted to respond, to defend herself, to shout her truth once more. But then she remembered something Patricia Miller had told her. The truth doesn't need to be constantly defended. The truth defends itself over time. Your job is to keep living, keep being excellent, keep existing, despite those who want you to disappear. So Eleanor closed the laptop and kept working. 4 months after her reincorporation, she published her first article, Benzothiazole-derived compounds in Cancer Cell Treatment, a methodological review and future pathways. The article was accepted by Nature Communications, one of the most prestigious journals in her field. Citations began to accumulate, other researchers contacting her for collaborations, invitations to conferences, recognition from colleagues who finally saw her work without the filter of Stone's lies. And then came the collective legal case. 4 more women, victims of Stone's abuses, had come forward after Eleanor broke the silence. Together they initiated a lawsuit not just against Stone personally, but against the National Institute of Sciences in Boston that had enabled his behavior for over a decade. The testimonies were heartbreaking. Brilliant women whose careers had been destroyed, ideas stolen, credit denied, psychological harassment disguised as academic rigor, veiled threats, systematic exclusion. Eleanor testified at 3 hearings. Each one was exhausting, reopening wounds that were just beginning to heal. In one of them, Stone's defense attorney tried to discredit her. "Dr. Vance, isn't it true that you were working as a cleaning employee when you initiated these accusations?" "I was working in a hotel laundry, yes." "And isn't it true that this might be a way to recover a career that, frankly, had ended due to your own shortcomings?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "My career ended because a man with power stole my work and destroyed my reputation with lies. I worked at a hotel because I needed to feed my daughter. There is no shame in honest work, counselor. The shame is in theft, plagiarism, and the abuse of power. But I suppose those are distinctions some people don't understand." The judge hit the gavel. "Next question, counselor." The case lasted 8 months. Finally, the court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. Stone was ordered to pay significant compensation. More importantly, the institute was mandated to implement comprehensive reforms, new whistleblowing protocols, independent authorship audits, protections for junior researchers, mandatory training on ethics and abuse of power. It wouldn't bring back the lost years. It wouldn't erase the pain, but it set a precedent, and that mattered. The night of the verdict, the 5 women gathered at a quiet restaurant in New York. "To the survivors," toasted one of them, Dr. Isabella Reyes, whose genetics research had also been stolen by Stone. "To those who spoke up when it was easier to stay silent," added another, Dr. Martha Green. "To us," Eleanor said, "for refusing to disappear." They clinked their glasses, not in celebration, but in recognition of the battle, of the cost, of the imperfect but real victory. Meanwhile, Alexander Sterling had written to her regularly as promised, emails every 2 weeks detailing changes in his company. They weren't performative emails or full of self-congratulation. They were honest, sometimes vulnerable. "Dr. Vance, I had to fire another manager this week. The one. At the Miami hotel, an employee reported harassment. When I investigated, I uncovered a pattern of intimidating behavior toward female staff. When I confronted him, he told me it was just jokes and that the employee was too sensitive. I believed her, not him. But I wonder how many times before would I have believed him? How many women suffered because I didn't ask, didn't investigate, didn't care? I don't expect you to reply. I just needed to write it down, to document the real cost of willful ignorance. A.S. Eleanor didn't always reply, but when she did, she was direct. Mr. Sterling, regret is useful only if it leads to sustained change. Keep documenting, keep asking, keep believing the women. But more importantly, create systems that protect them even when you are not present. E.V. 6 months later, Eleanor received an unexpected invitation. Alexander was organizing a conference on business ethics and corporate social responsibility. He wanted Eleanor to be one of the keynote speakers. I want you to tell your story, the email said. I want other business leaders to hear directly from someone affected by the arrogance of power. If it feels exploitative to ask this of you, I understand. But I believe your voice can change minds that need to be changed. Eleanor considered refusing. She had spoken enough, she had exposed enough of her pain. But then she thought of all the women still working in hotels, restaurants, offices, being invisible, being treated as less than, being humiliated. She accepted. The conference was held in an elegant convention center in New York. 500 business owners, CEOs, managers, corporate leaders. Eleanor stepped onto the stage in her professional pantsuit. No dramatic dress, no elaborate makeup, just herself with her truth. 2 years ago, she began. A man in this auditorium publicly humiliated me. He turned me into entertainment. He used my exhaustion, my appearance, my humble position as material for a joke. That went viral. Pause. The silence was absolute. That man was Alexander Sterling, who organized this conference. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the audience. He knows I'm going to say this. In fact, he asked me to, because he learned something fundamental. That power without responsibility is destruction, and that real change requires the humiliation of the ego, not of others. She continued speaking for 40 minutes, about workplace dignity, about how every employee has a story that leaders never bother to learn, about how corporate culture is built on thousands of small interactions where respect is given or denied. In the end, the ovation was long and sincere. Several business leaders approached afterward to ask questions, to seek advice, to admit their own failures. Alexander approached at the very end. "Thank you," he said simply. "I didn't do it for you," Eleanor replied. "I did it for them, for all the invisible employees who deserve to be seen. I know, and that's exactly why it matters." 9 months after the ball that changed everything, Eleanor received a call that left her completely speechless. Ira Del, Executive Secretary of the American Academy of Sciences. "Dr. Vance, I'm calling to inform you that you have been nominated for the National Scientific Research Award, category Social and Scientific Impact." Eleanor had to sit down. "Excuse me? Could you repeat that?" "You have been nominated." The committee was impressed not only by the quality of your resumed research, but by your bravery in exposing systemic abuses in our community, for representing the intersection between scientific excellence and social justice. I don't know what to say. The ceremony will be in 6 weeks, at Carnegie Hall in New York. We will send you the formal details. Congratulations, Doctor. When she hung up, Eleanor stared at the phone as if it were an alien object. Clara, who had overheard the conversation from her room, came running out. "Mum, what happened? Are you okay? I've been nominated for an award, a National Science Award." Clara screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard her. "Mom, that's incredible. You're going to win an award, like the famous scientists." "I'm only nominated, honey. There are other candidates, surely more qualified." "You are the most qualified. You are the best scientist in the world." Eleanor laughed, hugging her daughter, allowing herself to feel pure joy for the first time in much time. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. The Academy Committee asked her to prepare a presentation on her research. The media requested interviews leading up to the event. Colleagues wrote her congratulations and well wishes, but critical voices also emerged. A science blogger wrote, "Are we really awarding science or activism? Vance is competent, but there are researchers with more impactful work who haven't been nominated. Could it be that her 15 minutes of viral fame qualifies her for a national award?" Eleanor read the article with a churning stomach. She knew it would come, the accusation that she was being awarded not for her work but for her story. She called Dr. Carol Jenkins, who had become her mentor and friend. "I read it," Carol said before Eleanor could speak. "It's garbage. Your nomination is 100% scientific merit. But is it? Carol, be honest with me. Was I nominated because my research is exceptional or because I'm a convenient symbol? Silence on the other end. Then, Eleanor, have you read your own work lately? Your article in Nature Communications already has 243 citations. Your new synthesis protocol is being adopted by labs worldwide. 3 different groups are using your theoretical framework for their own research. But no buts. Yes, your story of overcoming adds an important human dimension, but if your science were mediocre, you wouldn't have been nominated. The Academy doesn't risk its reputation with pity prizes. Trust that. Eleanor took a deep breath, letting the words sink in. Thank you, I needed to hear that. And Eleanor, even if part of your nomination is for what you represent, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Science doesn't exist in a vacuum. Scientists are people, and reminding the world that resilient people, people who survive injustice, people who work in hotels to feed their children, that those people also do important science, that matters as much as any discovery. The night of the ceremony finally arrived. Eleanor chose her dress with care, not something flashy, not something that screamed for attention, a midnight blue gown, elegant but sober, that said professional without saying apologies for existing. Clara cried when she saw her. Mom, you look beautiful. Thank you, my love. Are you ready? Clara was also wearing a new dress, the first they had been able to buy without checking the price first. Pale pink, appropriate for her. 14 years, making her look like the young woman she was becoming. I'm proud of you, Mum. Even if you don't win, you've already won for me. Eleanor had to carefully wipe away her carefully applied mascara tears. Carnegie Hall in New York was magnificent. Gilded ceilings, red velvet seats, a crystal chandelier hanging like a constellation. Hundreds of people filled the space, scientists, academics, government officials, press. Eleanor sat in the section designated for nominees. There were 5 in her category. She knew 2 of them personally, brilliant researchers with impeccable careers. The ceremony began with formal pomp, speeches from the Academy president, video tributes to American science, awards in physics, biology, mathematics categories. Finally, her category arrived. And now, the president announced, the National Scientific Research Award, Social and Scientific Impact. A giant screen showed photos and summaries of each nominee. When Eleanor's photo appeared, the audience murmured. Some recognized her from the viral video, others from the news about the stone case. Her story had transcended science. The nominees this year represent the best of our scientific community, the president continued, not only for their discoveries but for their commitment to society, to justice, to the purpose of science, to serve humanity. Eleanor felt her heart beating so loud she thought everyone could hear it. The winner is Dr. Eleanor Vance. The world stopped for a second, then eruption. Applause, people standing up, Clara screaming with joy, Carol Jenkins sitting 2 rows back with tears streaming down her cheeks. Eleanor walked toward the stage in a kind of trance. Her legs were trembling, the lights were blinding, the applause was deafening. She received the award, a crystal sculpture that reflected light in 1,000 directions, a certificate with her name in elegant calligraphy, and an envelope with the $50,000 prize money. Dr. Vance, the president said, would you like to say a few words? Eleanor approached the microphone. She looked at the audience, hundreds of eyes on her. She took a deep breath. A year ago, she began, her voice trembling slightly, I was washing hotel sheets at 3 in the morning. My hands were red from cleaning chemicals. My back ached in ways I didn't know were possible. My daughter cried every night because her classmates were teasing her for having a mother famous for tripping in a viral video. Pause. The silence was absolute. I'm not telling you this to seek pity. I'm telling you this because we need to remember something fundamental. Talent, intelligence, human worth do not depend on titles or positions. They depend on the person, they depend on decisions, they depend on refusing to surrender, even when surrendering would be easier. She saw Clara in the front row, smiling through tears. When I lost everything, I was still a scientist. When I was serving drinks at elegant events, I was still a researcher. When I was publicly humiliated, I was still dignified, because those things are part of who we are, not what we do to survive. This award is beautiful, she continued, holding the crystal sculpture. I accept it with gratitude and humility, but the real award was recovering my voice. It was reminding myself that the abuse of power only works when the victims remain silent. It was refusing to be defined by the worst moment of my life. The applause began to rise, but Eleanor raised a hand. To the women scientists who have been silenced, marginalized, destroyed by men with power, speak up. Document everything. Seek allies. It's not easy. It's not fast. You might lose years of your lives in the process, but the truth, when it finally emerges, is unstoppable, and your science deserves to be recognized. Your names deserve to be on your discoveries. And to those who hold power, use it to elevate, not to crush, to include, not to exclude, to dignify, not to humiliate. Because the real power is not in how much you can destroy, but in how much you can build. It's not in how many fear your wrath, but in how many trust your justice. She looked directly at the camera she knew was broadcasting live. To the mothers working impossible shifts to feed their children, you are scientists, artists, philosophers, leaders. Even if the world doesn't recognize those titles yet, your work is no less important because it is invisible. Your dignity is no less real because it is ignored. And finally, Eleanor felt her voice crack, to my daughter Clara, everything I did, every difficult decision, every sleepless night, every time I got up after being knocked down, it was for you, to show you that the women in our family do not give up. We do not accept being less. We do not allow others to define our worth. The applause that followed was different, not polite, not perfunctory. It was genuine, emotional, standing, sustained, cathartic, feeling the force of it. She saw men looking uncomfortable but thoughtful. She saw young scientists with expressions of renewed hope, and she saw in the last row, barely visible in the shadows, Alexander Sterling. Their eyes met for a brief but significant moment. He nodded slightly, a gesture of deep respect, of recognition, of gratitude for a lesson it had cost him everything to teach and everything to learn. She returned the gesture, not as complete forgiveness, not as friendship, but as an acknowledgement that people can change if they choose to, if they do the hard and constant work of transformation. After the ceremony, the reception hall was full of people wanting to talk to Eleanor, young women scientists sharing their own stories of discrimination and abuse, students asking for advice on how to navigate hostile academic spaces, journalists requesting more in-depth interviews. An older woman, around 70, approached with tears in her eyes. Dr. Vance, I'm Rose Martinez. I was a scientist 40 years ago. I had to abandon my doctorate when my supervisor, Her voice broke. Eleanor took her hand. You don't have to explain. I know, I understand. No one believed me then. My family told me to forget it, that continuing would ruin my life. So I kept quiet, and I spent 40 years wondering what would have become of my research, my dreams. But seeing what you did, it heals something in me that I thought would never heal. They hugged. 2 generations of women scientists connected by shared pain, but also by renewed hope. A young man, probably 30, also approached. Dr. Vance, I'm an investigative journalist. I'd like to do a bigger project on your story, not just the viral moment, but everything. The science, the academic abuse, the recovery. I think there's a documentary here, something that could change national conversations. Eleanor considered the offer carefully. Would it only be about me? No. It would be about the system, about the other women affected by Stone, about patterns of abuse in scientific institutions. You would be the thread, but the story would be bigger than one person. Then yes, but only if the other women agree too. This is not my story to tell alone. The journalist, who introduced himself as David Williams, nodded enthusiastically. Exactly my thought. I will send you a formal proposal. Clara appeared beside her, still radiant. Mom, there's a man who says he wants to offer you a job on television, doing a science program. What? Who? A producer from PBS approached, business card in hand. Dr. Vance, we are developing a series on accessible science. We want the presenters to be real scientists, not actors, to explain complex concepts in a way everyone can understand. Your ability to communicate, to connect science with humanity, is exactly what we are looking for. Eleanor was overwhelmed. Everything was happening so fast. I need time to think, to process all this. Of course, there's no rush. Here is my information. When you're ready to talk, call me. Finally, when most people had left, Alexander approached, no longer with the arrogant confidence from before, but with cautious steps, aware that his presence might not be welcome. "Dr. Vance," he said when he was a respectful distance away, "your speech was transformative, not just for me. I saw faces in that auditorium changing, understanding. Thank you. What are you doing here? I didn't see you on the guest list." "I wasn't. I bought a last-minute ticket. I needed to be here, to see this, to see that you not only survived but triumphed, in ways that matter, in ways that I never could." Eleanor studied him. 2 years ago, this man represented everything she hated: privilege without conscience, power without responsibility, casual cruelty disguised as humor. But the man in front of her now was different. There was something in his posture, in the way he held her gaze, not with challenge but with vulnerability, that suggested genuine change. "How is your company doing?" Eleanor asked, not out of politeness, but out of real curiosity. "Different. Better. I lost some big contracts. Investors who thought treating employees well was wasting resources, but I gained others. And more importantly, when I walk through my hotels now, people look at me differently, not with fear, with respect, real respect, not the fake respect that comes from fear. That's good. I've also been working with labor rights groups, helping to develop industry standards for dignity and hospitality work. It's ironic. 2 years ago, I was the problem. Now I'm trying to be part of the solution." Clara appeared again, now with 3 bags of gifts that other people had given her. "Mom, they say we have to leave soon because the theater is closing. We're going now, my love." Eleanor turned back to Alexander. "Thank you for coming, and for the work you are doing. Keep doing it." "I will." He hesitated, then added, "Eleanor, can I call you Eleanor?" "Dr. Vance is fine." "Dr. Vance, sorry, I just wanted to say thank you. I know I don't have a right to your forgiveness, but I have gratitude for your lesson. It changed my life, literally. I am a different man than I was. Not perfect. I still make mistakes. But I try. Every day I try to be better." Eleanor nodded. She didn't say, "I forgive you." She didn't say, "We are friends now." But she also didn't say, "I hate you." What she said was, "Change is a process, Mr. Sterling, not an event. Stay in the process." "I will." When Eleanor and Clara left Carnegie Hall that night, under the New York stars, they paused for a moment on the sidewalk. "How do you feel, Mom?" Clara asked. Eleanor looked back at the gilded building, at the place that had been her hell and was now a testament to her victory. "Free," she replied. "Finally, free." From what? From the need for others to define me. From the shame that wasn't mine. From the past that no longer has power over my future. They walked toward the car, mother and daughter, 2 women who had learned that dignity is not negotiated, that true beauty comes from within, and that the greatest power is that of writing your own story. Eleanor paused one last time, looking up at the stars. "Do you know what I learned from all this, Clara?" "What, Mom?" Eleanor smiled, with a peace that had taken 2 years to find. That when you get knocked down, you decide how you get up. And that decision, that moment where you choose your dignity over others' opinions, that is the moment you truly come back pretty, not for others, for yourself. Clara took her mother's hand as they got into the car. The night enveloped them with promises of better mornings, of battles won, of lessons learned, and somewhere in the universe, justice smiled.